Oh, my struggles with science, spirituality. This is something I could talk about for an infinite amount of episodes, really. This is such an interesting topic for me because I've dabbled in both, and a lot of people will kind of stay in one or the other. And I don't think that's bad or anything, but as someone who attempts to link the science and the spirituality, a lot of the times it's been a difficult one because you can get caught up in one way of perceiving things where everything in the subjective world for everyone becomes truth in the spiritual world, and then everything in the objective world of science becomes the only truth as well. So it's an interesting dichotomy that we come across when we think about science versus spirituality, because a lot of spirituality is unproven still, but it doesn't mean that it's not true. And I think that's the problem with a lot of scientists these days. Though, here's someone or something have happened. Like, I got a good example here. A good example is past life regression. A lot of scientists won't even consider this, even though it's such a ridiculous pattern. The fact that people were able to regress themselves into past lives and they remember things not once, not twice, but thousands and thousands of times. We can't just ignore that. But a lot of science just wants to ignore it. Now it's even easier to ignore now that there's a bunch of books written on it because then they can say people are making things up. So that's the hard part about spirituality, isn't it, though? People can just be making things up. But then in science, you get caught in this strict framework, though, of until it's proven it can't be true. And then how do you prove things like love? How do you do it? I don't know. These are questions that we're contemplating here on this night with my dry botanical bubbly Fuji apple. This is hashtag not sponsored. I just found this at Heb. I had just discovered Heb or HEB, as most people call it. I call it Heb to just mess with Jesse. Um, now I'm stuck calling it now. But in Texas, they've got these stores. It's like Kroger if you're from Michigan. I'm from Michigan, and there's a bunch of Krogers up there. There's a bunch of HEBs down here, and they've got this really good, like, sparkling water drink thing that I've been enjoying. So that's what I'm sipping on here. Just thinking about what could be true. And all of it could be true. We're here in Rockport, Texas at the Airbnb. This is the living room. If you've seen the videos, if you're on Spotify or YouTube, you can see this. But if you're not, if you're on Apple Podcast, you can't. I'm sorry, but we've been filming the videos in the bedroom. But we came out here to test for the podcast tour that we're going to be doing here come October. So I was messing with the setup, I'm seeing that I'm going in and out of focus now because autofocus is not on for some reason. Did I turn it off? Just messing with settings. I don't know why I would ever turn that off, but just messing with the picture profiles, trying to get a decent one for out here because it's different lighting. It's supposed to be, I like it kind of, if you see my videos, I don't like the perfectly white light. I don't like cool temperature on the colors. I actually prefer like a yellow. But yeah, we're out here in the Airbnb in Rockport. I'll be here for a little bit longer, and you might get this view one or two more times. But I actually ordered a canvas as well. On that note, I actually ordered a canvas for the background of the videos. So I'm going to be filming in a bunch of different locations and different Airbnbs going forward because I live nomadically, right? So you're going to hopefully be seeing that canvas kind of pop up where it says universe the game. It might be behind me, or I might put it here or there and kind of make it try to fit in without like shoving it in the middle of the screen. So, but back to science and spirituality. I think a lot of people in the scientific community are scared to come out because and talk about spiritual concepts because it's such a scientific materialism point of view. Man, I would really love to have Rupert Sheldrake anybody knows Rupert, no, I didn't scuff his name, so don't tell him that I did that. Rupert Sheldrake, who wrote so many good books. He's got Morphic Resonance as one of my favorite books. I don't have it on me because I no longer have all my books with me because I had to let go of the books because I've been traveling nomadically. We fit two people and a dog into a Mazda CX-5 crossover, and we fit our entire lives into it, and I'm proud of it. But we had to leave the books in Arizona. So we'll get the books at some point. But for now, I can't like be like, look at Morphic Resonance. Boom. There it is. So yeah, I'd love to have him on because I swear that point was going somewhere. He had a wonderful talk. I did the Exit the Matrix challenge back in January, and for people that were like coming into the challenge before we even did the 30 days in a row of videos, I had everyone watch a video by Rupert Sheldrake that was an hour-long talk of his talking about scientific materialism and how science got to the state that it is, where it's so compartmentalized. And if you talk about anything outside of it, everybody basically kicks you off uh, the train and you're like an outcast of society. Not society, but of the community, which is really sad that we can't just contemplate new points of view like scientific theory should be. I mean, we can do that in theoretical physics, but if, people talk about multiverse theory, but if you start talking about ESP, oh, someone might have telekinesis or might be able to move something with their mind, or they might be able to see things that you can't see. Okay, you're completely kicked out of the scientific community. A lot of times, not every time, of course, but that's what we see happening. And we will at the same time paradoxically say, oh yeah, multiverse, yeah, for sure. There's a lot of well-known and established scientists that are like, yeah, many worlds theory is true. The multiverse is a thing and it's real. And I don't know if they say it's real, but they're like, yeah, I believe it's true. So how can we not contemplate these psychic phenomena? And I'm not like psychic phenomena. Yeah, that's not what I'm. That's not the hill that I'm gonna stand on and be like, this is it, folks. But it's just one example of things that I think would be really good to start contemplating for the sake of humanity. Because I think a lot of scientists are afraid that their entire life's work could be proven wrong. So they have an interest in things happening in a certain way. Because if they're proven wrong, then I mean, they'd be salty if they were proven wrong. But, a lot of the new physics that comes out, I mean, that's how we evolve. We got to understand what's not actually happening and what is actually happening. But at the same time, not get caught up in what's only been proven. And you don't have to have data for everything. And that's what scientists think because they don't understand the subjective reality. Like I talked about Dr. David Hawkins and how he had the levels of consciousness. And once you get to the level of love, you basically are in a state where it's subjective. Like you can't prove love, you can't prove joy, peace, enlightenment, any of those higher levels of consciousness. It's not a thing. Some people call that 5D. I'm not really a fan of that word and terminology because I think it's been scuffed. But this is what the classical love, joy, peace, enlightenment, these are in these states where you can't explain a city, you can't prove what a city is to someone who, and I'm not talking about Gene Keys. Well, I kind of am talking about Gene Keys cities in a different way, though. I'm more talking about in Dr. Hawkins' work. He talked about how there were cities, and that's not cities; those are cities, which are supposed these you each being, according to at least Richard Rudd and Dr. Hawkins, actually kind of get along on this. You reach a certain level of consciousness, you unlock some sort of gifts, depending on Richard Rudd says it's your DNA, but I don't think Dr. Hawkins said it was a specific thing. Maybe he did. I don't remember specifically every single part of his book. But it's this concept that we all have these gifts that we can unlock, but yet we can't prove them. And so that's as I've stepped more into the spotlight, you can say, as this podcast is top 50 now. And not only the podcast, I feel much more free on my podcast than I do other platforms, but there's a lot of judgment and a lot on the talk, but I'm not even really on that anymore. I mean, I go on there and I post, I don't really scroll over. It's more on the gram too. When you're reaching new audiences, it just a lot of times you get a lot of toxicity because people aren't ready for that. Because if you're here, you're probably ready to hear this conversation. You're listening this far, but imagine hearing this conversation about cities, and imagine like somebody that has never heard anything about spiritual concepts of this nature, that you can unlock gifts in your DNA. What do you mean? The DNA has gifts? There's so much background knowledge a lot of times that it's just so far beyond the paradigm that you get exposed to that on those short form platforms. And that's why there's more of it. And I think sometimes I've letting that got to me, and that's why I struggle because, really the feedback will either be religious or scientific, because you'll have people saying, "Oh, it's pseudoscience." I had a bunch of people commenting on that video. This is another thing I struggle with science and spirituality. You try and link them, and then people call you pseudoscience, even though theoretical physics is pseudoscience. All of it is, but it's still a science, because theoretical physics is a theory and it doesn't have any basis a lot of the times other than interpretations. Like if you look at the double slit experiment, and then you have these different interpretations of that. And so those are really not based in reality. Those are just interpretations. They're just thought patterns. They're just philosophies. And that just as much as pseudoscience as Dewey Larson's physics of reciprocal system. They're both the same amount of theoretical physics, but people on Instagram a lot of times forget, and not just that, but the short form platforms that have never seen this kind of content, they forget that, well, maybe, hold on a sec. Theoretical physics is also in this category of science. And there's many other things of science where it's kind of just like, what are theories that we can come up with to explain different parts? I mean, that's the most well-known one, but so that's where I kind of have struggled. I mean, recently it's been tough because I talked about this on Instagram a little bit. I did a post that I've been wanting to talk about both, but I feel this anxiety because there's a lot of people watching and listening now, and I feel this anxiety because I started talking about a lot of science, and then I didn't talk as much about. Well, I kind of did talk about the spiritual nature, but it was more about the metaphysical, but the underlying field. I started talking about unified field more, and I haven't posted about. For example, if you go back and listen to this first ever episode of Universe of Game, it's on reincarnation and Dr. Michael Newton, Journey of Souls. Well, I had a video that I made that was about it, and I was gonna post it like a couple days ago, and I just had so much come up within me about, oh, what are people gonna think? If Are people gonna take me serious if I talk about things that aren't scientifically based, because I'm entering more of like a larger audience? You're gonna get a bunch of people that, but then I'm just like, this is all just a bunch of mind games, because people aren't gonna like what you have to say no matter what you talk about. I could tell you to eat meat only, and you're like, bro, that's pseudoscience. Or if I could tell you to eat plants only, and you're like, oh, that's so stupid. I mean, there's people that are on both. Anything you talk about, you're Christian and you like that, and then people are gonna be like, oh, that's so limiting. And then you talk about Hermeticism or Law of One or other channeled works, and you've got more people talking things like that, and talking, saying, oh, it's this, oh, it's that, and it's just everywhere you look, people want to tell you you're wrong. That's the thing that I'm coming to after I've been on social media for so long, and people just want to tell you you're wrong. That's what they want, because they want to be right. They don't want to actually know the truth, because a lot of times people can't handle the truth, literally. So what they'll do is they'll tell you, yeah, you're wrong. You need to either believe in this, or you need to research this because you don't got it right. And then they think that within 1 minute and 30 seconds, now that we're at 90 seconds on the gram, they think, oh, yeah, well, that's all the information, right? On that topic. It's like so hard to fit all the data, not even just data, but all of an opinion into such a small container. So it's difficult. So you have all that happening. And after doing this for a while, I just see that. So it's starting to bother me less. But I think since I had such an influx of people come in that I let it get to me for a little bit. That's why I haven't posted as much. Not on the, I've been keeping it consistent on the podcast, but more on social media in terms of short form because I felt that heat a little bit because I did some scientific studies on DNA and how you can wind and unwind your DNA, and that's through emotions. And I started talking about other stuff that was had a lot of science in it. And then I kind of put myself into that box of now it's got to only be this because these videos did well. But I've had so many other videos that have did well too. But then it's not that but then you hear that though, think about that. Then my mind gets into this mindset of, and I'm walking you through this so you understand kind of how it plays out for me. Then my mind wants to go through this thing where it's like, well, it does well, then that's what I got to talk about. But that's not it. I'm so much, there's so much more that I have to me than just these one or two topics that have done well. There's so many, much more that I want to say about so many different topics. And that's one thing I think I've actually done pretty well of throughout my time online is that a lot of people will limit themselves to, I'm only going to talk about this. This is my topic, or these are my topics. Got to niche it down. But I haven't been that way. I've just kind of talked about whatever the heck I want to talk about when it comes to spirituality, science, ancient wisdom, philosophy, these other things. And so as I let go of that struggle I've been in recently, I just wanted to share this kind of moment with you. If you've been struggling with science and spirituality, how do you balance it? I think really the conclusion that I've come to is that I don't know. And not only do I not know, but nobody really knows. People think that they know, but some people know some. Some people know more than others, but nobody's got the full picture. No matter how everyone wants to think that they do, if they're trying to tell you that they do, more than likely they don't. Because I think the full picture is far beyond words, and I don't know if you can fit infinity into one person. So just talk about what you want to talk about and share what you want to share. And who really cares who listens or who hears you or who takes it this way or that way? Because it's more about the expression, because I think we're more here to express ourselves, not care about how people take that expression. Because I don't think that our nervous systems and our bodies are designed for millions of people to comment on our videos and for us to take that in. You know, one of the people who I really respect, David Wilcock, I remember a while ago I heard him say on a video that if you're doing this and you're taking in everyone's opinion about what you got to say, you're going to go insane. You're just gonna go crazy. You can't take it because so many people, again, no matter what you say, are gonna say a billion different things about how you aren't correct or how their philosophy is better. Their philosophy is more truth. Their philosophy is this. But if you don't think so, you don't think so. And that's okay. And who's to say what is the best? Because I don't think there is. I just think there's different levels. I think with things like Dr. Hawkins, we can come to conclusions such as things are relatively true. And maybe I said this in, I don't know if this podcast is out yet, but this is kind of a teaser. If it's not out yet, I don't think it's going to be out yet. So this is the teaser. I did the Elizabeth April podcast and I said on it, there's different levels of truth and relatively they're true. There probably is an objective truth, but it's beyond words. The objective truth is probably just what we call enlightenment, and it's a bliss and love that's beyond all comprehension. But there's relative levels of that truth, and that's what Dr. Hawkins did with his scale. So you have 200, which is courage. That's just a level of truth that's relatively true in comparison to, let's say, love, which is 500, which is also true, but it's just a higher level of truth. And I think that's why Dr. Hawkins focused so much in his life. He wrote whole books, Truth versus Falsehood. It's an incredible book. And he wrote it and he calibrated the different levels of truth. Because I think one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Hawkins is that the reason why man struggles to evolve, and I'm scuffing this a little bit, but it's very close to this. The reason why humanity struggles and is in the dark, or the reason why it has problems, is because humanity cannot discern truth from falsehood. If humanity could just discern truth from falsehood, then we would be all right because we would be able to tell what's manipulating us, what actually is closer to truth and what's not. But everybody claims to be closer to truth, so you've got to have discernment. And I think that's why things like his books, really help. And not sponsored by any means, but they've really helped me. Truth versus falsehood, power versus force, letting go. Um, he's got so many incredible books. But on the other hand, it's like we can discern that within ourselves because that's what he was saying. You don't even have to know the scale. Your body can tell truth. When you are in a higher state of consciousness, there becomes a point where your body responds to the presence of truth. So if that's true, then when I'm exposed to an idea, I can actually tell in my body if it's true. Imagine if we could all tap into that, how the world and all of society would change. If I was going to invent something, if I was Nikola Tesla, who I share the same birthday with and name, if I was Nikola Tesla and if I had kinesiology muscle testing and I had someone to do it with me, which he was alone a lot of time, but let's say that he did, or let's contemplate what could have happened. If he was able to test out all the different ways to get wireless energy and he was able to test it, will this invention work? Will this work? Will this work? Yes or no? We could invent anti-gravity overnight. If people really knew the power of that, we could invent so many technologies to help the world, but people don't see that. They don't see the value in spirituality. A lot of times, scientific people don't. And then the inverse, the spiritual people don't see the value in the science. Because the science is valuable because it's a language we speak. We're taught it in school. That's why I get into the science, because I think there's a significant portion of the population that if you have zero science, they're just gonna completely say it's whatever. It's not even close to true. So imagine the difference if I told you there's a quantum field and everything is a wave until you observe it, then it becomes a particle. Imagine the difference that would make versus just telling someone, yeah, there's the field that underlies everything that we want. How do you even explain that? There's a field underlying everything. Well, you do it how ancient traditions have done it. The metaphysical. If we're in the metaphysics 101 class, I talked so much about all the different traditions that said there was an underlying field of energy. I even did a video recently here on quantum entanglement, on YouTube at least, where Indra's net, it's the same thing. There's a underlying field of energy. Well, that was more about the holographic, but it's still there's an underlying field that has all the jewels, and in each jewel, it reflects all the other jewels. So basically the holographic universe in an old tradition. And there's many more, right? And there's many more. So I think my point here is to say that science is not the only language, and neither is spirituality. And I think that there's a beauty in mixing both, because I think that it's not more impactful, but it's just a different type of impact that will help a certain type of logical people like me. I talk about it in a way that I do, not only because I think that it'll help the world, but because it helped me, and I feel like I can only speak from experience, and I can only share from what helped me along the way. Not only, but I feel like that's a massive portion of what I do. The science helped me to understand. When I was at the beginning and I started to explore Dr. Joe and all of his neuroscience. And I want to talk much more about that. And I haven't talked much about that online at all. I talked about it a bit in my book, but well, I actually talked about a decent amount in my book, but I haven't, for some reason, I just haven't made videos on it. And that's a neat, I'm actually quite knowledgeable in that area, but not very many people would know that because I just don't talk about it. So, and the reason I'm knowledgeable is because that was one of the first things that I studied was I've said this many times. I've studied You Are the Placebo was one of my first books that I ever got, Dr. Joe. And I continued on, read Becoming Supernatural and his other books, and then at the same time, I was into the Law of One. So I got such a large understanding from not only studying the science, but also studying the spiritual. And then I started to talk about only the neuroscience. If you go back and look at my first videos on Instagram, it's a lot of kind of like Dr. Joe esque type feel. And that's why, because I was reading it and I was really taking it up. But then I also took in Law of One. But I didn't talk about the Law of One because I thought it was too out there. But then I started to talk the Law of One. It was the thing that set me free. Because a year later, more than a year later, I was at 1,000 followers in a year. And I started talking about Law of One on TikTok, and then it blew up, and then it did amazing. And it got me to the point where I am now, where people were able to find what I was doing. And it wasn't until I set myself free in that way. And I kind of feel like I'm having a stage two of that, having another hero's journey war, just to even to another level, because you get tested. I feel like tested, if you want to call it that, but you can call it whatever you want. I feel like things come around to see what are you going to choose the next time this catalyst comes up. And for me, it's like the catalyst is coming up again where I'm feeling this type of energy within of, okay, science, spirituality. How do I mix these? Because not that many people are doing it. It's wild. I first off, if I need you to do me a favor, I don't need you to do me a favor, but I would love for you to do your pal Nick a favor and give me some names of people that you think are worth me interviewing, especially for the tour that's coming up in person, but just in general too. If they're not in the U.S. and not in the Southwest, that's fine. I'm going to Texas to California and in between, all the people in between. So let me know who you think I should podcast with. And why this comes up is because I went on Instagram and I'm trying to find people that are doing things that are remotely kind of similar to me. And I'm typing in consciousness, I'm typing in spirit science, I'm typing in hashtags, I'm looking for reels and things. There's really not that many people doing it. And I was kind of mind blown. I thought, isn't there more people talking about this stuff in the way that I am? And people aren't. I mean, I bet there is, but I just can't find them. I hope that there is, but maybe that's why people are like jumping on and liking what I'm doing because it's just not out there. And I thought there were a bunch of, there is some people, and I've interviewed, and it's not really interviewing. I podcasted and had a good conversation with a lot of them. Like King Cash was a great conversation. Indigo Bruno. I think my most popular podcast is with Indigo Bruno, and I'm good friends with him now. He's an amazing guy, and he does the mix well too. But I'm ready also for more. And I would do Indigo Bruno again, and I'm going to in person, but he's in the East Coast and I need West Coast right now. So but let me know if you think there are people that I would be good to interview. Please, please, please. If you're if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, DM me on Instagram for love of God, or send me an email, nickzei, nickzei .evolve@gmail. Okay. And I'll put that in the description too. Send me an email or comment on YouTube if you're on YouTube, or send me a DM on Instagram. Somehow get me the information of people that you think would be good, because I need to find more good people to interview. Now I have a good list going, and it's not like I'm struggling. I'm not. I already have like 3 podcasts in the pipe already filmed, and I've got more planned. So it's not like it's not immediate, but I always would love your feedback. We're on this journey together of kind of exploring consciousness and what's going on. So, hit me up. Hit me up. And so to finish off this episode of Universe the game, game, spirituality, science, I'm not really in either category. I don't want to put myself in a box. I'm already an outsider in the scientific community because I don't have a degree in any certain field that is related to science in that way. I went to school for kinesiology. So it's not really a study of the human body and movement. It's not even really in the science place. The sciences of, it's funny because that was more what I was interested in first. It was like I was interested more in the body, and then I got interested more in the mind and the soul and the spirit and all these other things. But that's why I'm still interested in the body. That's why I'm going to have people on um, that are also talking about body stuff because I think that's important and practical too. So we're going to have more conversations about that as well. But I'm already kind of an outsider in that community, and so spirituality. I'm not an outsider in that community, but I'm also like about that science life as well. So I'm doing my best to mix them, but I'm not gonna have science for everything. That's why I talked about it on Instagram. I'm not gonna have science for everything because that's just not gonna happen. Because science is only discovered a certain amount, and it's super limited with what it's able to be at. Yet, does that make sense? It's super limited because we've only we're always discovering things. That's why I said in my video I did on Dewey Larson with reciprocal system theory, RS2 now, I said he discovered it because he discovered it. It was already there. Just like Plato discovered some of the Platonic solids. And, there's uh, arguments of did he discover them all? Where did they all come from? All these things. But that's how I like to put it. More about the framing of it. Discover. We're all just discovering things. So there's a lot of non-physical things, There's a famous Nikola Tesla quote I gotta mention. The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in a decade than it has in the previous century combined. I think that was an exact quote I did off the top of my head, man. I'm so fucking proud of myself. If I actually got that right, somebody quote me and let me know if I got that right, but I'm pretty sure I did. Uh I've talked about that quote a lot now, so I'm glad that I got that. But anyways, the quote, think about what the quote means. We got to study the non-physical. And I guess I'm going to lead the charge since not that many other people want to do it. I'm not the first one. No, I'm not the only one doing it either. There's plenty of other people out here doing it, and some people that I respect. So I will give you some people that I respect in the field just so you have some references that I think are good. For example, I already mentioned David Wilcock. I hope to have him on the podcast, but it's super hard to get a hold of him. So let him know if you're a D. Wilcock fan like I am. Let him know. Send him a message. Let him know if he wants to be on. And also, yeah. So I'd like to have him on, but I haven't seen him really do that many podcasts like ever. So hopefully we'll get to talk to him about the law of one. I'm gonna put that in the field, and because I put that in. If you go back and watch previous podcasts, you're gonna be surprised at some of the guests I have on for the in-person tour because I have some huge names coming on the podcast. I'm not going to give it away yet, but I said if you go back and listen to previous episodes, I said in those episodes, I shit you not, and I'm going to say it when I have the episodes come out. I'm going to say during the episode, I said in previous episodes, I wanted you to come on. I know you probably didn't see it, but I just put it out there, and that's the power that we have. So I'm gonna do it again because it worked, and I believe in it so deeply that I'm gonna put it out there. These are some people that I want to have on the podcast that we would very much like to talk to. As in I would like to talk to them, and I'm sure you would really like to talk. Enjoy that conversation. You're really gonna enjoy it. Trust me. I feel like that guy. Uh, what was the name of that suit company for those in the Midwest growing up? You're gonna like the way you look. I guarantee it. It was a tuxedo company. I can't remember the name, dude. I don't know if that was local or not. Anyways, maybe nobody will get that reference, but it's still funny in my head. But here are some people that I want to bring on the podcast eventually. and that I respect. First off, David Wilcock. Second, Greg Braden. Uh, third, Graham Hancock. Randall Carlson. Um, Rick Strassman. I would bring on Dolores Cannon, but Julia Cannon, who I'm in talks with right now. Uh, Dr. Joe, of course. Really just like to talk to Neville Goddard, even though he's no longer around. Joseph Rodriguez, Bruce Lipton, Nassim Haramein, Sim Haramein, however you pronounce his name. Please don't judge me based on the pronunciation. I don't remember it. It's like 1:30 a.m. when I'm recording this episode. It is literally 1:30 a.m. on the dot. I'm looking at the clock right now. Okay, so those are the only ones that are coming to me off the actual top of my head. I already have others that I haven't mentioned. If you're like, you missed some of my big names, it's because some of the big names that I have that I didn't mention them on purpose because they're actually gonna be on the podcast. Already they are confirmed. So just wait. Just wait because I'm telling you, I'm actually gonna vlog it too. That's my plan. I'm gonna vlog it with this camera and with my iPhone. Probably more with this camera because it's professional. But I'm gonna vlog the tour. It's gonna be on YouTube, and I might post some clips on IG. We'll see how it turns out. But yeah, those are some people. I forgot what my train of thought was, but those are the people that I'm gonna bring on to the podcast. When that happens, could be in the next couple months. We're starting the tour October 14th, and we're just gonna kind of travel around, and we're not gonna film every day, but we're just gonna kind of go from state to state and kind of make our way to the people that we're gonna podcast with. That'll be Jesse and Jax, my partner and my dog. So as I said before, we fit all three of us into the car, and I'm proud of her because she had so much clothes when we started out, and she really dialed it back and took a lot of clothes to donation. So mad props to Jesse. We're gonna bring Jesse on the podcast. I was actually supposed to do it tonight. Bring her on the podcast tonight. Here's some evidence. Here's if you don't believe me. Here's some evidence. I have this second mic. Literally, I'm holding it in my hand. If you can see that, if you're on visual too. But the second mic wasn't good enough, so I ordered another Shure, which is this mic, the MV7. So we're gonna get the second mic. I'm actually gonna have her on the podcast. Next podcast you'll see will be EA. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the Elizabeth April podcast. I did as well, and I'll probably talk about how it went and things like that in other episodes because I don't want to spoil it. But without a no spoiler alert, I think it was a great conversation where I was able to just dive deep and attempt to understand her point of view because it's very different from mine when it comes to the way we approach things. Because I said at the beginning of that podcast, well, you're gonna see this isn't really a spoiler because you probably already know this if you know the both of us that I took the inverse because she said she didn't get into science for her reasoning, and I was very much the inverse. I got into science because I felt like it was really beneficial to humanity to really connect the dots and things like this. But I think that they're both amazing paths, and I think they're both going to serve different types of people or different types of your different parts of your brain because it could serve both types of people. Like one person could take in both our information and find it extremely valuable, but it's just going to activate different parts of your brain and hopefully give you that well-rounded approach. That's why I think it's always important to take in many different sources and continue to figure out what you feel like will work for you and what will lead you to a place of peace and love and happiness and joy. And I got to remember that myself. Got to remember that myself. I've really been doing a decent job of it. And then the last little bit, I kind of fell off. And, I'm human too over here right now. human right now. So sometimes I'm like I get caught up in the game and I got to remember, oh yeah, I'm in it. I'm literally in a game and I don't have to get caught up in these mind games that I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to achieve this. It's not near as bad as it was, but every once in a while it creeps up, and I think it creeped up along with what I talked about today with the science, spirituality. When I start to get into like that, those energies that come up for me, and I let them go, a lot of times other energies will come up too. So I had some of that energy come up as well, but we released it. Feel good. Feel good about the EA podcast. Think it went great. Hope you enjoyed that. Later this week, this episode should come out literally tomorrow. So I'll probably put out the podcast in 2 to 3 days with EA. And I have had this drink in my hand for quite a long time. I should probably finish it up. If you didn't hear the flavor, it's Fuji apple. Oh my god. All right, my friend. Thanks for listening today to University Game. I think this will be number 51. Science, spirituality. Can we find a happy medium? No pun intended. Can we find somewhere in the middle where we can start to use the benefits of science, which is, to me, again, the study of patterns and study things and figure out, well, maybe this could have some truth to it because there seems to be a pattern. It seems to be repeatable, and it's quite an interesting thing. But let's not ignore it because it doesn't fit into our current way of thinking and current pattern of thinking. Let's look at it, even if it means we're wrong. Can we do that, science? I think true science does do that. And there are scientists out there that are doing it. Shout out to them, because I'm not trying to dog on science and say it's terrible, because someone comments on this and says that that's what I'm trying to say. No, Chief. That's not what I'm saying. You didn't listen to the end of the podcast. I'm trying to say that science is limited in a lot of ways through specific materialist points of view. But is science being done that is with using the scientific principles of, we're going to research things and figure out if it's true. We're going to take the theory, we're going to develop the hypothesis, go through the whole scientific theory and really get after it, and make changes for society, make massive impacts, create technology that will help the world, that is outside of us. And then also, what I feel like is my goal as well is to not only help you to see the technology and that is in these other external things. Like, for example, when you think of the universe, I tell you it's holographic. It's like, okay, well, part of the science of the holographic universe is understanding uh, the nature of a hologram and how reality that is supposedly outside of you, how you can access that technology of the universe, because it is literally technology, but not only external technology or what we perceive as external, how we can navigate that, but also inner technology. So that's why I think it's important to understand all of it. So we can not only as science study phenomenon that is outside us, there's also a lot of inner stuff, but I'm talking about the inner emotions, these things. And, a lot of Dr. Joe's research does that. So shout out to you, Dr. Joe Dispenza. You're an absolute legend. Absolute legend, mate. Absolute. And Dr. Bruce Lifton, of course, doing all of his research on epigenetics, which would like to make actually more videos on myself to just talk about epigenetics and that good stuff. So that'll do it for today's episode of Universal Game. To support the podcast, check out my freaking book, dude. It's probably gonna help you. chances are that it helps you, because it's got more stuff like this. If you got value from this podcast, you'll get value from the book. Yeah, you can always join the Patreon and stuff, because we do a lot of good stuff on the Patreon with meditations, monthly Q&As, and I'm gonna put the Law of One Applied. I just uploaded this last night, but the Patreon is gonna get access to the Law of One Applied class that I held a couple months back. And then also I'm gonna add in a little, I don't know what time frame yet, so don't freak out, but I'm also gonna add in the Metaphysics 101 class that I just did. At some point, I'm gonna put that in Patreon as well. So the classes go on Patreon. I already have the Grounded Master class in there, and check that out. Support the podcast. It helps. It always helps because, we're completely, when I talk about the things I talk about, you don't get a lot of people that are like, yeah, man, let's sponsor this dude. You just don't get it because I'm not, right now at least, I'm not biohacking. So we're not really in the health and wellness space right now. We're top 50 for philosophy. So, it's a hard thing. So the sponsors of this podcast literally are the book. That's what allow it. Like the people that got the book, literally, let me tell you, this is true story right here. This is legit what happened. So all y'all that invested in the book in June when it came out, I literally just got that because it takes an insane amount of time to get the money from that. So I just literally 2 days ago got that, and I literally right away used that money tonight. I mean, right away, as in we tested it tonight because this is the earliest time we had to test it. I tested the mic and I thought, you know what? I just got this money from the book. I'm going to literally put it right back in. You paid, if you got the book, you literally bought the MV7, the other MV7 that I have. So if you bought the book, when you see the next MV7 and you see the in person podcast, literally think to yourself, bro, I paid for that. Because you did. You did. I thought about getting a second camera too, but I tested out the one camera setup. It actually looks really good. This camera and lens. The people that got the Grounded Masterclass originally, you helped me get the new lens because I broke the other lens when I was out nomadically living because in the wind the tripod tipped over. So I'm telling you right now, when you get the book, that shit goes right back in, right back in. All the people that got the book as well. If you want to know what am I doing with what I get from that, you're literally going to help me be able to do this podcast tour. Without your support in the book, would not have be able to do this tour. I can tell you that hands down, straight up, because when you get the book, what you're doing is you're allowing me to get the Airbnbs to host the podcast and to pay the gas to get across the country. I couldn't do that without you. We are crowdfunded 100%. I've only had one sponsor ever, and it was a journal. Other than that, we haven't had. We're not. That's not the way that I really wanted to do it. I would rather do it through the book, and that's not to say I'll never have sponsors, because if I get approached by products that I'm like, oh, these are amazing, 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 this is really cool, this really helped me. I have had a lot of nootropic. Hold on, I want to finally finish the drink. I have a lot of nootropics companies, or I've had people with supplements try and get me on that, but I'm like, no. And I've also had people try to get me in clothes, and I'm like, no, not really interested. I have my own merch. I mean, I don't know. I haven't talked about this in a very long time, but look, the hoodie I'm wearing is a hoodie I designed. One step at a time. Let me know if you want me to bring these back. If you want me to bring these back, I'll bring them back for a limited time. Spiritual Nomadic was the name of the brand. So I can bring those back if you guys want. If you'd rather do that, yeah, whatever. I mean, I wear this because it's comfortable. Like I did not know no idea that I was going to talk about that. But enough talking about all of that stuff. Anyways, I think what I'm trying to get at is that you guys getting the book, and whether you got the merch before when we did the merch drop, whether you've gotten classes, whether you've gotten one-on-ones with me, all of these go directly back into growing this, making it higher quality, doing bigger things. And let me tell you right now, if you want to know the direction, like the book, this is the direction, because we're buds now, right? You've been listening to the podcast. I want to share this with you because I'm so hype about this. So the next step, the next step is we're doing the podcast. Okay. To travel around, do the podcast for a while in the US. The next step is to be able to do that full time. To be able to do that full time is probably going to be not doing it out of Airbnbs, is do it out of a camper. So to do it out of a camper full time and travel around, not only do that, but make uh content with that. So this is the different phases. So like phase one, let's talk about the different phases of Nick's eye, since we've made it this far tonight and I'm feeling it tonight. It's like 1:45 a.m. and I'm just really feeling intimate with you right now. So here's all the phases with Nick. Phase one was get to the point where you're able to have a place to live, because phase zero was a phase where I was doing it out of a rooftop tent with Jesse. You can go back and watch previous live videos on YouTube here. I don't even know if I called those Universe the Game. Those probably are still Universe the Game. I have like a rooftop tent review that I did. That was a podcast. I know which lot I did it here on YouTube, but I don't know if I did on put it on Spotify, not podcast. I may have. The point is that you can go back and watch those. You can see that journey. I've go scroll back on Instagram. I posted about the rooftop tent. This is I'm not BSing you. I dead ass did that. We lived out of the tent for a year. So when we did that, I remember Jesse always gets a kick out of this. Well, Jesse's mom asked me, "What is the thing that you what is the thing you miss the most when you lived out of the rooftop tent?" While I was still doing it, actually. It was present tense. And I said, the thing I miss the most is walls. So that was phase one, was get myself into some walls. But that actually took some backtracking, because I went and stayed with my dad for a while I literally every day posted videos, and I went so hard, and I'm proud of myself because I took it to the next level. Then, now we're in the phase where we're no longer doing that, and we're in Airbnbs. And so that was phase one, is Airbnbs, because I don't have the credit. And we talked about that in the previous episode. My credit and my hopefully the oh man, I'm seeing that I'm getting a little blurry. I don't know how much of this podcast I was blurry. But we talked about my credit and how I went into debt because I tried to take out a bunch of loans to do Amazon FBA, and how that went south in the my awakening story podcast, which was, I think it was like it's in the 40s. It's 48 or so, something like that. It's right around there if you scroll. But I talked about how, I that's because I was young. I was like, man, I've got 700 credit. I've never took a risk in my life. I'm gonna take a risk because I want to do that. So along with that, there's a lot of things I can't do. Like there's a lot of things I can't do, such as they're like, Nick, why don't you just if you want a truck and a camper, why don't you just finance it? It's like, because I can't finance it because of my credit. And we almost did finance a motorhome at the beginning, but we both didn't have 2 years of back taxes for self-employment, and I still don't have that. So there's no shot that I can even finance these things. So then phase two is this is what I wanted to do in the first place, but it was like, okay, I just know there's different phases. And I'm not going to be able to get a F-250 that's big enough to pull something that's big enough to pull an RV quickly. So, because I'm going to have to pay cash for it. So phase two is like get in the Airbnbs, be able to do this full time and really enjoy the shit out of life, while at the same time helping humanity explode. For me, when I say enjoy life, I enjoy making content. If I didn't enjoy this, I would not be up at 1:48 a.m. telling you my plans for the future and telling you um how excited I am about this, because I enjoy the podcast. I wouldn't have done the podcast if I didn't enjoy it, right? So when I say to enjoy life and to do this full time, I mean going hard though, because I'm putting out a podcast a week. I'm making hopefully like five videos for Instagram, and then I repost those to talk. So making a bunch of short form content, but then also doing podcasts, because this is what I really really enjoy. I would really love to do this as my number one. So Well, I don't know about number one because I really enjoy making videos too. So I don't have to pick, right? I can do it all. So we're at that point where I can make videos, I can teach what I want to teach, and I can do it full time. And I'm so unbelievably grateful that I made it. And it's new. It's a new thing, and it's a new thing. That's why I'm investing to get to even more of the next level with everything I can. Literally the book, when the book came in, or when the book money came in, this is the first time I've had a big surplus of money, like in a long, long time. And with that surplus, you wanna know what I'm doing? Investing it in a book tour, or not book tour, podcast tour. Podcast tour. Immediately right away, so that the podcast continues to be up leveled, buying new mic, buying other things. The only other thing I bought was a power cord. I bought another power strip because I don't have one right now. I don't know what happened to mine. But yeah, so and buying the canvas, that's what I was thinking of. I bought the university game canvas, and hopefully that turns out really well. But yeah, so then phase 2, after phase 1, like phase 1's complete. Now phase 2 is getting to the point where I can get a truck and a camper and travel around the US doing multiple things at once, because you see, the more I continue into different phases, actually the more I do. And I just delegate different things to, you know, as I get the resources. Because everything that you're seeing, let me tell you right now, if you want to get inspired to do this yourself, every single episode of University Game, every single video that you've ever seen okay, you ever seen me do up until this point was edited, filmed, edited, produced, written, created by me. Is in, not that, I don't mean that in an egotistical way by any means, like me, but like I've done it all myself. I've not hired anyone. I have not had any help when it comes to doing any of the producing and making anything. I had one person who you will definitely see and meet on this podcast at some point. I already talked to her recently about coming on. Ash from the yoga couple, who really helped me to just get a vision of how to take myself to that next step. And I've had other mentors and things along the way, but that recently, that has been in the last 6 months, it's been incredible and priceless. So to have her, and I'm sure we'll have a conversation with her about the struggle that I went through, um, to get to where I am, because they've went through so much. It's ridiculous, guys. When you hear I'm not talking to guys, I'm talking to you, right? When you hear there's what they went through, and you've heard what I went through if you've listened to that episode, but you'll probably hear more about it as if you haven't listened to that episode, or as I continue to do more episodes. But you can do this no matter where you start. And so, yeah, we'll have her on, and continue to improve. And okay, so this is where I was going. Phase 2, get the truck, get the camper, start traveling around. And these are the different things that I'm going to do. Number one, I'm going to travel around and podcast with some of the biggest names in the world. Yes. And I'm going to already have some of them on before I get the truck and the camper. But also, some of the niche people that are doing incredible things that don't get the time of day a lot of times on big podcasts. Like I'm talking about, I want to get in there with some culture, man. We'll do different phases of this, but phase 2 is getting into the culture of the US, specifically with the truck and the camper, and travel around and kind of have that home, because I don't have no home right now. I'm living nomadically, and that is good, but I'd also like somewhere to stay that I can say, yeah, this is mine, because I've been traveling nomadically for a long time now, or living with someone where it really wasn't my home. So I'm excited to actually have my own home. So if you don't have your own home, or you can relate to that, just know that you can get there if you continue. Keep going. Keep going. That's what I live by. Really what I live by. Just keep going. And keep going can be about your state of being. also about what you do, not just action oriented, a whole different conversation. But when we continue on with phase two, then we get into this part where I podcast and I also travel to the people that are in that niche and I do the podcast, but then I also film the video about the cultures. Like I want to travel around to different types of cultures in the US and see what they're about. I want to get into Jewish mysticism. I want to get into uh, some Buddhist culture, even here in the US. And, where is that at? And let's explore the deep nature of not only religions but spiritual traditions that are here in the U.S. that a lot of people aren't talking about, and let's hear what they have to say about what's possible from so many different areas of life. Like we're going to talk to scientists. There's so many different people that I want to talk to, and I'd love to do them in person because I feel like that's just something I've dreamed about for so long, and it just takes the conversation just to the next level when they're in person. I know it does because I did the Careheart podcast in person and it was just amazing. I knew in that moment when I did that podcast about numerology with her, this is it, man. This is it. So along with teaching and doing these other things that I like to do, doing in-person podcast is like, oh, I love it. Love it. So I'll also be teaching, and I've got other books that I'm going to write because I've got so much research, and I'll keep researching. But to me, it's like I'm doing research on on my own, but then I'm also doing research through podcasts. That's how I look at it. And so we'll continue that research to help the world through my own teachings and then through the teachings of others through the podcast. And I really want to share my platform and allow other beings to come on and share their wisdom as much as I can. And so we'll do that and give people voices that usually don't have that voice. Another goal, not to just hit, I do want to talk to a lot of the big names, but also to hit on the names that aren't so big yet. Um, Give them a chance because they're really getting it. I can really tell when people are getting it. And that's why, I was getting it and people helped me and I want to relay that back. When I was live streaming uh video games like this many years ago now. I remember I always thought about when I was popular that I wanted to do a day where I just watched other people play games even though I was live streaming. Like I gave other people the spotlight. Like that was always a goal of mine. And now a goal of mine is to do kind of the same thing, to interview people in podcasts with people that usually you don't hear of, to give them that spotlight that they, deserve. Everyone deserves that. So I'm going to do my best. And I'm in my mind is going crazy about me saying everyone deserves that. I think everyone deserves a chance to express themselves, and I want to give people a chance to express themselves if I feel like what they're doing is profound, of course. So phase two is to do that, travel around, not only make videos that are podcasts, really make podcasts that are also videos, better way to put it. But I also want to continue on with doing vlogs. I really like doing documentary type vlogs. There's a couple of videos that I shot when I was out at the Grand Canyon that I haven't released yet in Sedona. These things that are really along those lines that you're going to get more of an idea of what I'm talking about because I haven't done too many videos like this yet. But phase two will be about going to different places and vlogging it and documenting it, doing documentary like cinematic type stuff, and traveling around meeting the people. And then phase three, instead of doing that in our country, well, can't say our country. I don't know why I said that, but instead of doing that in my part of the world where I currently am, to branch out and to do that across the world and to travel the world and to do that. To explore different cultures, to explore different places, and to really not only just do it because I want to see it, because, yeah, of course I want to see it. I wouldn't do it if I didn't want to do it. But because I feel like going like I can see myself right now going to like a Hindu uh, kind of culture and getting in there and really talking to them. And there's going to be translators and all that, but really diving into their wisdom that they have in that culture by going to it, really experiencing it, learning about it directly from the people. And I've got phase 4, 5, 6, and many other phases, but those are the beginnings. And that's where that podcast is heading. So everything that you get, from the books to the Patreon to however the heck you want to support me, I've got many different ways that I don't got to name here, but all of those go directly into continuing the up level to the point where just can't even, I can imagine it, but I'm so excited to bring it into. So my voice is getting shot. It's a lot longer. I thought it was going to be a 20-minute podcast today. That's usually how it goes. Thanks for listening. Been an amazing episode. Hope you got some value out of it. If you did, drop a sub if you're on YouTube for your main man here, Nick Zai. Otherwise, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I really appreciate some reviews. That always helps the podcast as well. So I will see you on one of these platforms. Maybe it's YouTube. Hopefully, it's back on the podcast. Maybe another episode. More than likely, another episode, right? All right. I will see you in the next episode, hopefully. And until then, peace.